Welcome to Ancestral Recall. I'm your host, Eli Kaplan. This is a Magic web series that explores and explains 20 years of the history of Magic the Gathering. Today we're continuing our dive into Magic's first sets, 1993's Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited. These sets capture the attention and devotion of tens of thousands of gamers who pass it on to hundreds of thousands, who then taught millions more to enjoy the first trading card game. And I'll tell you that I still think Magic is the best. What's that? You can't see me? Different place to shoot this week. Alright. Today, we're looking at red. Red, the color of fury, passion, emotion, and blood. Red commands the energy of fire and lightning, and the strength and fortitude of mountains and the earth itself. Red may ally itself with chaos, but prefers to see itself as free and unfeathered foremost, with a range of infinite possibilities for it to explore. Red is the least likely to meditate on a situation and find a new path, but it is the color of intuition and trusting one's heart. Red has unparalleled depths of courage, but when the stars align, it can express great cowardice. Opponents loathe facing against red mages because their actions can't be safely predicted. Red mages can also sever your connection with the land itself. Goblins, dwarves, giants, manticores, Viashino, brigands, artists, and many others populate the reaches of the world and are at the beck and call of sorcerers. And of course, at the top of the mountains, roost the majestic dragons, the ultimate of predators. You may want to bring your asbestos clothes. Adventure, on the other hand, will never shy away from Red's doorstep. I need to talk a little bit about the iconic nature of Red, and I feel that the best way to do that is with Planeswalkers. The monocolored Planeswalkers each identify one or more key concepts in their color. Now, I feel having bad for not done this with the black and blue set reviews, but Wizards has done a really good job of embodying the different elements of the 5 colors with the monocolored Planeswalkers, so let me fix that right here. Skip ahead by clicking this button if you don't want to hear my analysis of black and blue Planeswalkers and how they embody different colors elements. Black has Sorin Markov, who drains life handily and gets the misplaced ultimate ability of Nicol Bolas. Meh. This wasn't a great design. Sorin himself is an iconic character, a cool black protagonist, but Sorin Markov the card, well, it's a bit of a mess, I know. Black does get the ability to control turns with things like Worst Fears and Word of Command. Yeah, Sorin just throws me. Now, Black does have 3 different versions of Liliana Vess. The original focuses on hand manipulation with an unlikely payoff. Liliana of the Dark Realms ties herself into the swamps and wrapping herself entirely in black mana, and Liliana of the Veil specializes in torturous decisions. The last 2 really do capture a lot of Black's flavor. Blue, on the other hand, has 3 Planeswalkers. Tezzeret is the nod to Blue's interest in artifice, reusing and searching out powerful artifacts. Tamiyo, my favorite Planeswalker, loves tapping things and locking them down and has my favorite ultimate in Magic. I mean, reusing every spell I draw again for forever? Sign me up. That's the ultimate form of blue card draw. But we have to acknowledge the whale in the room, Jace Beleren. Jace is all about the card draw and also has specialized in all sorts of blue tricks from deterring attackers, milling, and bounce. But, okay, I think we've covered all the major elements of blue and its Planeswalkers. So let's talk about red. Red has 3 Planeswalkers. Chandra Nalaar is Magic's leading lady on the whole, the eternal frenemy of Jace. She gets 4 incarnations as well. The original focused solely on burn, and she's never stopped caring about fire. Tibalt, okay, red often deals with annoying randomness such as drawbacks, random discards, and that's what Tibalt is all about. He embodies drawbacks. That fits him because he's a devil, and spending time around devils is never really healthy. Koth the Hammer is a master of stone and crags, much like Liliana of the Dark Realms manipulates the swamps to her whim. Koth masters mountains. But there are more aspects of Red that Planeswalkers haven't explored yet. Red has very fast, very aggressive creatures, and a devil-may-care attitude, and is usually the most efficient color in terms of using its mana every turn. Those aren't elements that really lend themselves to being on a Planeswalker, to be honest. At least not to date. So the monocolored Planeswalkers are emblematic of elements of the color they represent. But how did these ideas come to be in the first place? Let's see the context of Red in the very first set, 1993's Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited. We'll start off with the trademark of Red, Burn Spells. Now, for those of you who are fairly new to Magic, Burn Spells are spells that can deal damage directly to a creature or a player. Sometimes it does both. Creatures are very reliable, affordable sources of damage over time, but sometimes you need to get that damage done all at once. Preferably to get rid of an opposing creature so your own attackers can get through, or to trade a little creature of yours for a big creature of theirs. So if opponents do manage to stabilize their defenses, hopefully you've done enough damage so that you're able to burn your burn spells at the head to finish the game. Direct damage is a fundamental concept of Red and its most versatile tool. In fact, Mark Rosewater has gone on the record saying that burn is not one ability, it's actually 3 or 4 different abilities. Lightning Bolt was the basic unit doing 3 damage for a single red. Everybody knew it was awesome as soon as they saw it. Man, Lightning Bolt, so cheap, so good. Now, Fireball could take out multiple little guys or go right to the head. And if you had an effect that doubled your mana output, the Red X spells could dish out huge amounts of damage. And maybe you had not 1, but 2 different ways to double Red's mana output. There were 2 other powerful burn spells. Disintegrate was always second banana to Fireball, since it could only ever take out 1 creature, not multiples, but was just as effective when aimed at the head. The other, Earthquake, was especially valuable since it could take out ground pounders. Naturally, Earthquake was especially dangerous since it damaged the caster as well, but if the Earthquake player played his cards right, the Earthquake didn't affect him nearly as much, especially if all of his creatures had flying. But flying was on so many of the most commonly played creatures, it didn't really matter that much. In fact, almost everyone played tons of flyers in 93 and 94, so Earthquake was usually inferior to Green's Hurricane. I may have sold you on the utility of these X spells, but Eli, you say, didn't you mention that there were ways to double your mana? Why yes, we need to look at those. The first one is Gauntlet of Might, an artifact. This artifact was exclusively designed for red mages, though. With the Gauntlet in play, you get an additional red mana every time you tap a mountain. The Gauntlet also pumped up all red creatures in play +1/+1. This is really good stuff. For 4 mana, I mean, it's an amazing deal. Wizards stopped printing the Gauntlet after Unlimited, however, but there were follow-ups. Time Spiral gave us the Gauntlet of Power, or yes, I have to make the reference, the Power Glove.
I love the Power Glove. It's so bad.
This glove would benefit both players if they shared the named color. New Phyrexia followed this up with Caged Sun. The same thing, except you didn't have to share the benefits, although the cost was steep at 6 mana. Judgment's Mirari's Wake acted similarly, pumping all of your guys regardless of color and doubling your mana, but this was only available to green-white mages. Then there's Channel, which lets you trade life for colorless mana, but that's not a red card. I need to talk more about Channel next show, but if I'm talking about Fireball, I can't not talk about Channel. It's another solution to boost your X number. The other way to boost your X number was Mana Flare. This enchantment only cost 3 mana and doubled all lands' mana production. Now, this was symmetrical, but most decks at the time didn't use many X spells, so dedicated red decks could exploit this card far more than other players. Today, this type of effect is in green, not red. Champions of Kamigawa's Heartbeat of Spring was a clear signal that R&D wanted this ability to be green, not red. And it fueled an amazingly powerful archetype in Kamigawa block Constructed. As of the production of this show, there's a card with the same effect, Dictates of Karamitra in Standard, but nobody has really broken it open in Standard, though. Yet. Speaking of Mana Flare, Red also had the ability to hamper mana production. The first way Red can do this is with Mana Barbs. Mana Barbs is very straightforward, requiring players to take a damage every time they tap a land for mana. Red weenie decks, such as Goblins, could use this card to punish players who played more expensive spells. Red could also use Stone Rain to slow down its opponents. Today, Stone Rain is usually considered too good, but in ABU it didn't stand out too much because there were 2 other land destruction spells, one of them only costing 2 mana. It took time for Wizards to place Red at the top of the land destruction pile. And if opponents didn't want to tap their mana, there was another enchantment, Power Surge. Power Surge presents a dangerous question. If you don't use your mana, you're going to suffer at the beginning of your turn. Now, in 2014, with the elimination of the mana burn rule, Power Surge is now virtually useless, but it was a powerful enchantment back in the day. Red had some powerful hosers. To deal with white mages, they could destroy all planes for 4 mana with flashfires. Ugh. How do you stop them from hitting Armageddon? By blowing up their lands first. Ooh, so unfair. Now, to deal with blue mages, Red had Red Elemental Blast countering blue spells or destroying the blue permanent. Now, the biggest surprise about Red and ABU is that, well, it's the creature color. Red has 24 creatures, the most of any color. Green is in second place with 21. White got the least with only 14. Now, I wonder why this is. Today, green and white get the most. Red's usually second to last as it's the sorcery color. Another head-scratching decision is that Red got a creature hoser, Smoke. This enchantment only allowed creatures to untap a single creature at a time. It got later partnered with Legends Kismet to make attacking en masse a nightmare. Suffice it to say, Smoke is no longer in Red, and really isn't done at all. The biggest, most badass creature in Red was Shivan Dragon. The dragon could do unparalleled damage if it got through, and it had flying. This was a really impressive creature, but today, 6 mana for a 5/5 flyer, it's just not that good a deal. Now, the younger cousin, Dragon Whelp, also did a boatload damage when attacking, and it could pop itself if it flamed too hard. That's some cool flavor there. Everyone wanted Shivan Dragons, but the fact that Dragon Whelp could get out there 2 turns earlier was a major feather in its cap. Red had other flyers, unusually. Rock of Care Ridges was a rare 3/3 flying bird. Nothing special about it, but 3/3 flying bird for 4 mana, yeah, it's definitely out of flavor today. Granite Gargoyle was a Windrake for Red, plus it had the ability to increase its toughness with red mana. The basic flavor was that the living rock beast could harden and become impervious to damage. Cool flavor, sir. Later Gargoyles became white or artifacts, though. It's highly unusual, but on rare occasion, Red does get mountain birds that fly. Airborne Condor and Thoughtbound Primarch are 2 examples. Most birds today are white or blue, and black gets vultures. But Red itself didn't like flyers. In fact, Red had Earthmind, an enchantment removing flying from a creature. The fun part about removing flying is that hitting the ground forcibly hurts, doing 2 damage to the creature. It's just hilarious. On the ground, Rock Hydra was the first creature with X in its casting cost. It could be as big as its controller wanted, and could even get additional +1/+1 counters on it if its controller paid RRR on the upkeep. However, Rock Hydra also had a very serious drawback. Every time it took a point of damage, it would lose a +1/+1 counter unless the owner paid R to keep it together. It's like a bad version of Wither. In Mana Flare decks, this was a good creature, but other decks wanted nothing to do with it. Rock Hydra is also the first Hydra of Magic, in a color which occasionally gets Hydras. My favorite red creature of all time, Ancient Hydra, is connected to this card. But today, green gets the good Hydras. Wizards has said that Hydras are now green's iconic large race. It makes sense since they're tied to mana and have a theme of growth. Polychronos is the one that sees the most tournament play today. 2-headed giant of 4 eyes. Now that's a hell of a punny name. Is it 4 is or 4 eyes? I mean, you can tell what I think. In Magic, apparently having 2 heads means that you're hard to block because you can see more of your surroundings. And you can usually block 2 creatures. Red has had 2 creatures mechanically based around this guy, like 2-headed Dragon, a powerful finish in Zvi's My Fires deck, and 2-headed Slivers. 2 references in 20 years? Okay, 2-headed Giant isn't a success. There are 2 dwarves in Alpha. Dwarven Warriors can dig a path for another creature to attack unmolested, but they have to be small enough to fit in the tunnels. This card is overpriced, but it is flavorful. Dwarven Demolition Team can tap to destroy a wall. Really, all these guys think about is digging. Now, there haven't been many dwarves in recent Magic history. The most important one in the game's history I can think of is Balthor, Kamal's buddy from Odyssey. But Rosewater has said that we should be seeing some in the future. But there's more to ABU's mining theme. There's Burrowing, an enchantment that gives a creature Mountain Walk. I'm pretty sure this card had Bugs Bunny on it in playtesting. I know how the playtesters roll. And there's Tunnel, which allows players to directly destroy walls, although I can't say it makes sense when Dwarven Demolition Team is in the format. Red gets half of the 4 classic elements, with Earth Elemental and Fire Elemental. Fire Elemental was quite popular based on its more efficient attacking stats and, yeah, that babe art. Earth Elemental was less so, despite being very efficient for a 5-drop. There was a small vertical cycle of goblins. Mon's Goblin Raiders were at common, at typical 1-drop stats. Their flavor text was uncharacteristically serious. Their uncommon partner, Goblin Balloon Brigade, was at uncommon. Strictly better, they could jump into the air with a little prodding, and they had the goofy flavor text we know and love. And note that in the art they are attacking, other goblins. Goblin King wasn't a goblin himself at the time, but he helped his squad. The playtesters loved these guys, and soon after, most little red creatures became goblins by default. When we look at the common vanillas, there's surprisingly a lot to talk about. Grey Ogre is here. Yep, just a Grey Ogre. I mean, players who've been around for forever still use the term Grey Ogre to talk about 3-mana 2/2s. I forget why we chose Grey Ogre specifically, but it was the baseline for a barely passable 3-drop. Wizards usually puts fun and interesting activated abilities or some keywords on them today. There's a strict upgrade, the 2/3 Heirloom Minotaur, who comes at a more demanding mana cost. And at 4 mana, you get Hill Giants. Hill Giants, also a generic 3/3 for 3C term. But Hill Giants are considered to be pretty good and limited throughout the years, especially if they have good keywords. These aren't even cards, they're archetypes. And yet it feels weird to look at, to shuffle up with these originals. Hey, it's Ironclaw Orcs. Ever stalwarts on the offense, they have no inclination to fight on defense against anything but puny creatures. Now this is flavor. Red can get grizzly bear stats as we see here, but there's usually a drawback. Alas, there was only so much room for a race whose role were almost always performed by goblins as well. The orcs eventually got the boot. The sad part of it is that thanks to the effectiveness of Burn, Ironclaw Orcs have won many more tournaments for people than Grizzly Bear ever did. The blocking and attacking restrictions just don't matter if red can clear the board, something that green just couldn't do. The lone orc that has stood the test of time was Orcish Artillery. Yeah, I know, more goofy arts. It took years for Wizards to reprint this guy as a goblin, though. But Orcish Artillery was actually played quite a bit, especially in combination with Circled Protection Red. Keldum Warlord was the red creature with the most potential. The Warlord could hit harder than Lord of the Pit if you were able to get enough creatures out. This guy was extremely popular for the first few years of the game. Today, this effect is solidly in the realm of white. My personal favorite variant of Keldum Warlord goes to the Ice Age legend, Martin Stromgald. ABU has 2 trolls. There's Uthden Troll, a much better version of Grey Ogre. Regeneration in red was a bad call for the color pie, and since then, Wizards has shifted this, and trolls, to green. Sedge Troll has inspired lots of cards, from M13's allied pairs to Sedge Sliver, which gave all slivers the same upgrades as Sedge Troll. There's even a color swap version in Planar Chaos with Hedge Troll. I find it irritating that in 2014, people are talking about the M15 allied color pair cards as Curd Ape cards, because, okay, yeah, Curd Ape is the most famous card that relies on its controller having a different land type out, when Sedge Troll came out months before. On the other hand, Curd Ape gets 2 power for 1 mana, so maybe I should get over myself. Back in the day, we called Stone Giant Chuck. Chuck could throw a guy into the air, and he had better stats than Hill Giant for 4 mana. This card was very flavorful and was included in most very early red lists. This card inspired later hurlers like Bloodshot Cyclops and Brionne Stalarm, who were able to bypass the whole aerial journey and just throw the creature directly at its target. It was mechanically cleaner, and I'm personally glad that we've moved past Stone Giant, but good old Chuck, well, just seeing him brings back nostalgic feelings. Fire breathing was a characteristic of red creatures from the very beginning. Besides Shivan Dragon and Dragonwhelp, there was also Wall of Fire, and any creature could get it with the aura Fire breathing. It took many years for Wizards to print a constructed playable version, but with Theros, Dragonmantle finally saw prints and actually got played in 60-card decks. It's a shame we've never had a keyword for Fire breathing, but given that it always requires a mana cost, I think we're better off without such a mechanic. Most people would say red is the least sneaky of the colors, but it does get to trade in Chaos. False Orders allowed attackers to retroactively swap blockers. This card was killed for templating issues. It was one of the game's most complex commons ever printed. One of the most infamous errors in Alpha was Orcish Oriflamme, which seemed overpowered at 1R. Well, yeah, it was overpowered because the designers really wanted it to cost 3R. Later printings fixed that. For burn mages, red had two other really powerful spells. The first, Fork, copied any spell played by anyone for just 2 mana. If your opponent plays a fireball for 7 mana, hey, you get to fork it. Unlike many other spell copying cards, Fork keeps the X spell characteristic of the original and it turns the copy red. The other broken sorcery was Wheel of Fortune. This symmetrical effect had players discard their hands and draw a new hand of 7. Anything that makes all players draw 7 cards, like Dragon Mage, is a wheel effect. That's what people call it, wheel effects. Now, Wheel of Fortune decks would reward players who played all their cheap spells, then refill, leaving slower players in the dust. Since then, Wizards has printed a few cards that allow players to rebuild their hands like Memory Jar. But Wheel was the first. The dynamic between Time Twister, which rewarded control players by bringing all their answers back, and Wheel of Fortune, which gave red players a whole brand new set of questions, is a really fascinating one. Raging River was another amazingly interesting enchantment, creating a divide on the board, and creatures came into play on one side or the other. This was a physical thing. You put some creatures on one side and some creatures on the other, and once the sides were divvied up, the creatures couldn't interact in combat again if they were on the wrong side. This spell got a callback in Invasion with Standard Fall, which was less confusing in terms of actually managing the physical space cards took up on the table because they solved the Raging River problem without breaking the functionality, and made it all upside for its controller. If you want to add terrain features to Magic, do it with Standard Fall. It's a lot cleaner. White got Disenchant, and red got Shatter? That isn't fair. But then again, red got lots of good creatures, while white got the short end of the stick. So here's the top 5 coolest red cards. Number 5, Lightning Bolt. It's the most efficient red spell ever. 3 damage for 1 mana, Timmies, Johnnies, Spikes, they all love it. Number 4, Fireball. Where will you send the pain? This card lets you be very selective in your decisions. Number 3, Earthquake. When you channel the earth, large and small alike will feel your anger. Number 2, Fork. Copying any instant or sorcery for 2R is incredibly cheap, and it works with X spells. And the number 1 coolest red card of ABU is Shivan Dragon. It may not have dominated tournaments, but Wizards knew they had printed gold when they printed this most epic of fantasy beasts. So this brings red to a close. I hope you've got some good perspective. The thing that's missing the most from red in this set is haste. Now, a modern eye on red wonders where the speed of red is. Where's the naked aggression? The focus on the large number of humanoids points to more Gygaxian influence. It reminds me a lot of the classic module B2, Keep on the Bordered Ones. While white loved defending at first, Orcish Artillery was a great signal to point to red's way of attacking. And this inclination holds true today. White has traded away some of its defense for a more aggressive tone, though. Red had the option to go fast or furious with lightning bolts, orcs, and goblins, and then finish with Orcish Artillery, or it could go big with mana doubling, X spells, and artifacts to increase its mana output that much more. You never knew what a turn 1 mountain would bring, and that's why I think red is so much fun. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, hammer on that like button, maybe share a little, it couldn't hurt. And for new viewers, subscribe and go back and check out my older videos. I bet you'll learn lots of new stuff and enjoy it too. Next week, we're exploring the last stop on the color wheel, green. This is Eli for Ancestral Recall, signing off. Good games, and good luck.